the interesting thing about neurodiversity is that there is this legend
Yes.
that everyone talks about, which is that we have been sent by aliens to study human behavior.
Yeah. Exactly. Hi, welcome to Diversifying Data. I'm Rakhi Sharma, and I'm joined today by Daniele Forni from HSBC. Thank you very, very much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you very much for inviting me.
I'm so excited. We've done lots of prep calls for this, and there's been a lot of back and forth on the questions. You and I can just talk. So this is probably going to be a really long episode that the viewers are only going to see about a fifth of what we talk about. So do you mind just giving me an overview, I guess, of your current job title, the organization that you work for?
Of course. So I'm head of portfolio monitoring transformation for wholesale credit and lending in HSBC.
Okay.
My job is to lead a team of software developers and of data scientists that build basically softwares for risk management.
Amazing. And how big is your team right now that you're managing?
Between direct and indirect, we're talking about 40 people.
Wow. So just I mean, you finding the time to come here and do our podcast when you're managing 40 people, it's even better.
It is the other way around because I have 40 people working with me. I can actually.
You can actually take the side. That's a great way of reversing the cycle there. So I guess, not to be completely ambiguous about this, but would you just mind giving me and the viewers a bit of an overview about yourself and your journey to get to this point?
Of course, yes. So starting from the beginning, if you will.
Yeah.
I was born in a small town called Sondrio in Italy, which is between the Lake Como and the Alps.
Oh, how beautiful.
It's very idyllic, very green, and but at the same time very small, like a very suburban, not even suburban, it's like a village in the middle of the countryside. And probably because of that, I wanted to do something a bit more adventurous, if you will. So I studied international relations and languages in Milan, where I actually studied Chinese and English. And
which we talked about is they're very opposing languages, really difficult.
Well, they are, because English is an Indo-European language, which is, again, is somewhat similar to, or rather, it's got similar logic and structure as Italian, as French, as German. They got all these influences. Well, actually, languages such as Chinese or Thai or sort of like not Indo-European languages, they have a completely different ways of pronunciation, of writing. You got characters which are completely different from letters.
Yeah.
You have also like completely different way of explaining yourself.
Right.
Which makes it challenging, but also makes it very interesting because if you just now we start to talk about a bit about data.
Yeah.
But if you think a language is made up by little components, little pieces that are logically connected.
Yeah.
And the logic is made up by whether people understand you or not.
Correct. Yes.
Because there is a standard language, and that's fine, that is on the books, but as long as you can be understood, you're going to be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I use a lot of hand gestures as well to kind of add to the value of it. If you don't know a language, I always say, have the keywords there and then use a lot of gestures, and that probably gets you from A to B.
Exactly. As in Italian, I'm very passionate about hand gestures.
Yeah. So Chinese and English, and you studied that in Milan?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes. Then I kept on going to China to study a bit, because you had to sort of like pick up the language from the source, if you will. I also worked a little bit in China, just as a bit of as a translator for financial institutions there.
Oh, wow. How was that? I mean, culturally and working there?
It was very interesting. And because I was probably like 22 at the time, it is very liberating, because you are young, you have a lot of all the world in front of you.
Yeah.
So the kind of experience are very formative, but are also very, very interesting to you. But simply because it is in the particular, in the particular age, in the particular mindset, And no, it was great. It was very interesting.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. That's good. I mean, I think that type of experience is not something that everyone has. And I think when you're young, even in in data, we always encourage people to have not only differing perspectives, but different experiences as well, because that builds to what you can deliver in the workplace afterwards. You probably have so much wealth of knowledge that you got just by being around different types of people, different industries, different ways of working as well. So that's great.
Yeah. Oh, it was very interesting. Then my last exam of the bachelor was economics. And I really like the idea of connecting numbers, statistics, facts through a narrative.
Yeah.
It's effectively what economic is.
Yeah.
It's telling a story based on some facts. And I found that much more rewarding than studying a language or speaking a foreign language.
Right.
Because a foreign language, you are bound by other people understanding you, while with economics, you are the one who tells the story.
Yeah.
You're sort of like you are in the driving seat of the explanation. I found it very, very fascinating. So I decided to come to the UK. I studied master's here in economics. And then I've sort of like, I never looked back. I never said like, now I want to go back and do international law or do languages again.
But did the other things, sort of language and international relations, did that help at all when you were doing the economics, or was it a completely different field and just completely different experience for you?
I think it helps to the extent that you have a better appreciation of international history.
Yes.
And of people in the world have different opinions and views and frictions, if you will, across countries and cultures. So I think that will really help, because just if you look at today on the newspapers, you've got like got these wheat prices increasing.
Yes.
And you think about countries in the Middle East, they rely a lot on wheat for the diet. It's going to become very complicated if the price increase.
Yeah.
However, the thing is not as simple as answer as, well, you just need to move to rice.
Yes.
You know, it's a bit more complicated than that.
There's all
there is
sorts
history,
of
there is a
dependencies,
culture behind it. So I think coming from international relations, coming from traveling across the world, it gives you the kind of flexibility, more nuance in the way that you think about
That's
issues.
really interesting. So when you were studying, you came back to do a master's here. Did you know that you wanted to stay in the UK, or you were still flexible in that regard?
Because I graduated through at the depth of the financial crisis.
Ooh,
I couldn't find a job in the UK.
Yeah, that's a really fun time to graduate.
Exactly. So I couldn't find a job in the UK, or rather, I couldn't find a job that I liked in the UK. Yeah. So I went back to Italy, and I found a job right away.
Okay.
With Deutsche, and I work in risk management there.
Yeah.
Do all sorts of things, but in those kind of roles that I had around sort of like risk management, project management, and how to use data rather than data itself, if that makes sense. I started to be good at it, or let's say better than others, let's put it that way, relatively good at it. And then I sort of like I created my career, then coming back to the UK with HSBC just to focus specifically on risk management and on project management and on data.
Brilliant. And you knew, obviously coming from doing economics, working at Deutsche, then going to HSBC, finance, you're pretty much ingrained in it. You've got that knowledge base. Is that something that you're passionate about, the industry?
Yes, I am. Working in the financial industry, what people realize when they work here, that they have a really, really, really big impact across the economy.
Yeah.
And of course, with this big impact, there is a lot of accountability and responsibility connected to it. But you're really able to make a difference, make a change that impacts millions of customers and clients. And again, probably nowadays, other tech giants, you can have the kind of impact if you work there. But at the same time, you've got these banks are still a great place to have the kind of experience.
Yeah, and have the reach, like you said. I think that's important, is if you want to make impactful change in a positive way, you don't always have to look at it as the negatives that they do, but if you want to make it in a positive way, that's a very quick fire way, or industry that actually does affect everyone in some regard. So that's interesting.
And specifically, if you think about like large organizations such as HSBC, you can actually travel the world with it.
Yeah.
It's a completely different experience.
Absolutely.
And it's very rewarding.
Oh, good. Well, that it seems to be, I think, because you're so passionate about not only obviously the industry, but we've talked so much about the diversity piece as well. And I want to get a little bit onto that now. So just as a, again, very, very broad question, and we'll probably dive into lots of different subsectors, but why is that diversity and inclusion piece important to you?
So it is very important to know whether you know Temple Grandin. But she talks a lot about neurodiversity and so on. And she always says that people with neurodiversity think in images. And people without neurodiversity do not think as images.
Yes.
So I have created an analogy for you to explain.
Perfect. This is going to be the title of our podcast. Yep, go for it.
Exactly. So if you think about cars, how cars are built nowadays, they are built to be very efficient and convenient in city driving, maybe 30-40%, and highway driving, maybe the other 30-40%. And because most people are used to that kind of driving, all the engine, all the tires, all the shape is tailored exactly for that. However, in life, you also have muddy road, you have racetracks, you have mountains. You get all sort of landscapes that with a normal standard average, or if you will, typical car, is not very useful.
Yes.
Because it's not very performant, or it's going to break down, or, you got all these issues.
Yeah.
And basically, diversity and inclusion is important because not only we need to accept that there are other kinds of cars, such as pickup trucks, SUVs, big diggers, motorbikes, and so on and so forth. But because thanks to those cars, to the different method of transportation, we can actually go on top of mountains. We can actually go through the muddy tracks. And what I think is really important to say about diversity and inclusion is not an ethical thing that we have to do.
Yes.
It actually benefits the entire society,
Yeah, I understand that. That was a brilliant analogy, though. That's really interesting because it's something that we see as so much of a tick box. We should have this many people, or we should have that type of person, or we should do this, there's no should about it. It's just there's different people that bring their own unique perspective and ways of working that probably in certain situations are actually better than the typical, like you said. So it shouldn't be that tick exercise. On
the flip side, of course, you need to then accept that a digger will block the traffic in the city.
Yes.
There are also drawbacks to that.
Yeah.
But it's thanks to this variety of things that you can actually progress as a company or progress as a society.
Yeah, and you found that I guess specifically working within your team, do you have a nuanced approach to how you try to include people that are different, or you just have that openness to yourself?
Each person is different.
Yes, absolutely.
And some people, like I was invited to speak about a career event, and the people asked me also the question about, what about introverts? Or what about me that I don't have that international experience? What do I do about it? And the reality is that I can give an advice, but at the end of the day, it's down to the individual to decide what they want to do in life.
Yeah.
Because if you think about the career, we think that there is only one path, which is promotions, getting money, and so on and so forth.
Yes, and going up and up.
Yeah, exactly. Which is a path, is what most people aspire to. But also, you need to accept and normalize, if you will, that there are different ways of doing things. You can move horizontally. You can move very vertically. You can jump completely different industry. And that's what, to some extent, I am very open with my team. I'm saying I can give you my advice, but that doesn't mean that it can apply to you because I'm not you.
Yes.
Everyone is very different the way they look at these priorities, things in life. And the important things, even including neurodiversity in it, is to be very flexible and acceptant of people's views, of people's flaws, and also people, pros. And it's about having that, being able to be very, very adaptive.
I think adaptive is the complete correct word, and it's not spoon feeding or telling someone how to behave or how to act. It's giving them the confidence that they can approach you or anyone with whatever problems they're facing. If they are neurodiverse, it, potentially it isn't even that big a problem. I feel like sometimes people create this narrative that if you're neurodiverse, you're going to have to work completely differently to everyone else, and you're going to have separate this, separate that. In some cases, yes, but in other cases, it just might be that they work. Some people work at a different pace to others,
exactly.
or some people prefer working in the mornings to the evenings. That type of thing. And I think I get very conscious of talking about people from a neurodiverse background because A, I don't have the personal knowledge to do that, but B, I don't want to sensationalize the topic and really other them, because it does seem to be it's a range, it's a spectrum of how people work in the same way that typical people do. So I don't know if you had any personal experiences within that to share.
I think if I look back in my career, there are two things that come to mind. The first one is I always struggle with the attention to detail, especially in banking. There is everyone says devil is in the detail.
Devil's in the detail.
Everything has to be perfect to the edge. And it could happen that I could create like a 20-page presentation in a couple of hours. But then because I made a small typo, then people just ignored it. And I was like thinking, wait a second, if you think about it, I created like all the massive amount of work in such a small short time.
Yeah.
You should, I was thinking that I should be awarded.
Yeah, praise
for that. Yes. And similarly, like I could write like a couple of 200 lines of code in like a couple of hours and get to 99% of the answer, but there's still 1% missing. And there is often that feeling, especially in big organizations of the financial industry. And the other thing is the social aspects of work, which requires you to have chit chat, requires you to talk about how was your weekend, how was your day, how you doing, blah 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 blah, which people with neurodiverse minds struggle with because they find it very pointless.
Yes.
Because it doesn't have an objective right now.
That's so interesting. I had no idea. At all.
Oh, really?
No.
That's a classic.
That's the thing is I understand with maybe finding it a bit difficult, but the pointless nature of it, I think that's what was interesting to me. Okay, so it's just then there's no real validity in doing that. Then why?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Why should I do that?
Why should I do that?
I should ask you about your weekend. I don't care. Well, but it's interesting because actually it's not that I don't care. I care for the person.
Yes.
But I wouldn't show it by asking how's your weekend.
Yes, so you'd show it in a different way and actually get to the the point of asking real questions about them rather than the frivolous sort of top layer questions.
But human society today, the 21st century, but even earlier, based a lot of, let's say, social lubricants based around these chit-chats.
Yeah.
But again, both these two things that I just mentioned, they are not like things that are impossible to overcome. Things that are actually quite, the solution is quite straightforward. So when, after a couple of times, of course, having a problem with attention to details, I then started to realize that I had to pay much more attention to the end finish of the job, of the work that I was doing. And the other thing that I would do, I would also ask colleagues to review, which is very important. Always have a 4 eyes check, of everything that you do, and that is always also useful. Which also helps in the in the human connection kind of things. The second part.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about neurodiversity is that people in the lore of neurodiversity, people think that they've been sent by aliens to study human behavior.
What?
Yeah, so in the lore of neurodiversity, there is this legend that everyone talks about, which is that we have been sent by aliens to study human behavior.
Neurodiverse people have?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. You need to go down to the Reddit and subreddit to get those.
Yes. Wow. Okay. I that is the most bizarre thing that I've ever heard. And people do make up some very weird things, but that's crazy to me. Yeah. Okay, and it's a widely known legend, then, is it?
Within the community.
Okay, that's really funny. Well, I'm pretty sure you're not sent by an alien. You're here to help me do a really great podcast. So I'm pretty sure that your purpose in life is not to study me as a human.
But often the solution to this kind of inability of understanding how humans interact and behave is to read about it. So I always recommend it in any talks that I go to, and to just read How to Have Chit Chat for Dummies, or How to Have social conversation with people.
Yeah.
And now I sort of I have a bank of questions and a bank of standard answers in my mind that I know how to interact.
That's really, I think just breaking it down to that granular level of, let me just in case I get nervous or overwhelmed or feel like I don't know what I'm doing, let me just have that information to hand. That's going to be really helpful for someone. I know that, because probably people are just thinking that they don't quite know how to tackle that situation, and they think that they should be a different way. But no, it's just, you shouldn't be anything else than you are. It's just, there's ways of tackling issues.
Yeah. It's sort of it's very similar to a skill. If you don't have their skill, you can learn their skill.
Yes, that's true.
I don't want to call it neurotypical society, because it sounds like Harry Potter, that you got people with magic with them,
Yeah. No, I
get
that.
But because the majority of people do something. First of all, it doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do, but at the same time, doesn't mean that we should, be rude, or we should not respect other people's ways of doing.
Yeah.
That's why upskilling in social skills, maybe it's a repetition, but upskilling in that is actually very important.
It's useful.
Yeah. And clinically, the depressed people actually benefit a lot by reading books like How to Be Happy, because it changes your way of thinking, changes your perspective. So that's actually something that is, it should be advertise more, I guess.
I think so. I think ways, rather than just saying this is who they are, you have to deal with them in a certain way. I think from that neuro, as you're coming from the community, I think that's really helpful and sound advice to just say, actually, there are proactive steps that you can also take to just make yourself feel more comfortable in situations. You don't have to sort of suffer in silence or work in a different way and be, nervous about other people finding out. Just upskill in that, like you would any skill. And I guess coming back to data and the data industry, how have you found sort of the industry's acceptance of, sort of before joining the data industry and now being so fully entrenched in it? Do you feel quite comfortable, working in different ways now comparatively to before?
I've always worked, I don't want to say in the same way.
Yeah.
But I've always worked in the approach that felt good to me. That doesn't mean that I've not changed my approach.
Yes.
What I mean is that I often read books about management, read books about new agile methodologies.
Yeah.
And then I incorporate what I think it fits me and it fits the project that I'm doing.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I don't see as a change from 0 to 1. Sort of is a gradient change that over time I started to do something different.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to say how if I did something very different what I was doing 10 years ago or 5 years ago, because I was in a different place.
Yeah.
It's
not, that makes sense. It's not linear. It's just following a pattern of doing whatever feels natural to you in that particular industry. I get it. But I think if we're on the industry, what do you think are some of the ways that the industry in general could do things to make things more inclusive?
So there are probably, again, two things that come to mind.
Yeah.
The first one is the work environment. So people with neurodiversity, they struggle with change, they struggle with noises, they struggle with contacts.
Yeah.
And the open office is probably the worst thing that you can create. That probably organization can still do a bit more about it to allow different ways of working.
In terms of like, would you say extra meeting rooms like this, or?
I guess I don't want to say to go back to the cubicle.
Yes.
But something in between hot desking to the cubicle.
Yeah, I understand.
It really depends on the person. But then, like other small things that I think now have become much more accepted is like having noise cancelling.
Noise cancelling headphones. That's it. Yeah.
So I remember when I started working.
Yeah.
It was very frowned upon.
It was?
Headphones. Yeah.
Really? But
yes.
but that would help you focus, even if you weren't neurodiverse,
exactly.
to help you focus more.
Because there's an idea that you need to be available right away.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
While now it's much more accepted that you can have your headphones, you can you can work.
I mean, it helps me focus. It really does. Like I when I'm working and I'm laser focused on something, I can't have the chit chat around me. It really it throws me off completely, and I'm not neurodiverse to my knowledge. I would say that those type of things are things that most businesses seem to be aware of. Do you think that people in general are doing enough for it, or do you think that there's just an awareness of it at this stage?
I think, and it goes then to my second point.
Yeah.
I think the industry, not only the industry like the data or financial industry, but in general society has made really very made a lot of steps to increase the awareness of neurodiversity, especially probably in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Like we wouldn't have had this conversation.
No.
3 years ago, 5 years ago. It's really completely changed. And I think the maturity of it. So usually first starts with awareness. So telling people, look, there are people that think in a different way. There are people that have different needs, and so on and so forth. And then over time it becomes like, oh, I understand, so I need to do something about it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't come automatically or at the same time. There is always a bit of lag.
Yeah, that's it, because it's like conceptualizing the idea of like this is something that needs to change, and then there comes the action. But I think these are all workable solutions. Noise cancelling headphones, it's private spaces. It's not asking to move mountains or anything. So I'm quite hopeful for the fact that people will be more receptive to this and different ways of working going forward. So I think I was going to ask you as well, what do you think about the differences between younger generations and older generations in the workplace?
That's a good question. So I don't want to sound ageist. I think that's the term. Older generation bring to the table a certain kind of experience, and younger generation bring to the table another kind of experience. And again, thinking about the diversity, they're different, but because the society and organization can benefit from them in different ways. And the thing that is, however, that is very, very important is to have all of them at the same table. And you need to have, the way I think about it, younger generation in organization is like a bench. Sometimes it's called like a blood that comes in the organization. They really help giving you perspective, but most importantly, and is very important for financial institutions, understanding the community that you serve. Because without knowing younger generation, you don't know who you are servicing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, at the same time, you cannot just rely on older generation, and you need to find the right way to mentor the younger generation with the older and the older with the younger.
Yeah.
And work together, and everyone brings something different at the table.
Absolutely. I mean, I was going to say within the data industry as well, it's not a new industry. However, with there being so much focus now on businesses being data-centric, data first, presenting the facts, presenting the data, do you think that having that those newer generation, younger generation who are learning those new skill sets and picking that up quicker, how beneficial do you think that is in organizations?
I think it is extremely beneficial.
Yeah.
It's extremely beneficial. Sometimes we talk about digital natives.
Yes.
And some skills are just very difficult to pick up at a certain age, and it's much more easy to pick up at a younger age. It's as simple as that.
Do you think that the older people are slightly more mature people at work are slightly resistant to it, maybe at that stage of their career?
I don't think so. I don't think there is a resistance. I just think there is a difficulty in understanding, difficulty to explain how that can benefit you.
Right.
There's always a narrative.
Yes.
No one is against change.
Yeah.
Everyone is against accepting something they do not understand.
Yeah.
So a lot of work that I do and needs to be done is always to explain like why we're doing change, why we're doing something different.
Yeah.
And explain, basically putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and understand how does these would affect that person and the day-to-day job.
Yeah.
You know, change is difficult not because change itself is difficult, it's because people takes time to understand.
Takes time to understand it.
And people take time to explain.
Yes,
to explain
absolutely,
sometimes.
absolutely. And I think that ties into the neurodiversity piece as well, in terms of as long as people understand, then nobody's out there resisting other people being happy in the workplace. You know, I genuinely do believe that. I think it's just understanding that this is something not new, but something new that they have to wrap their heads around and work with different people in a different way, and encourage that diversity and foster that inclusivity within the workplace. And it becomes easier once you understand the validity and why it is important to do it. And you've actually been a really big advocate for something that I only recently heard about, which is reverse mentoring. I heard about it, I think, only a couple of weeks ago, because I've not been a part of an organization where that's been typically adopted. Could you just speak to A, what that is, and B, what your experience has been with it as well?
Of course. So reverse mentoring is when younger or junior people sit in a room with a C-level executive or a senior executive and mentor them. Rather than, as usually is, the other way around.
Yeah.
And really the benefit that you get out of it is that the senior level executive hear firsthand the feedback from those junior people. They hear their grievances, they hear their comments, and at the same time, it is an opportunity for them to learn something new about themselves and about the organization. At the same time, the younger people actually, they feel heard. They have an opportunity to actually tell you as it is to these executives. And it's funny that people neurodiverse actually don't have filters, so they're actually excellent to do this kind of
this.
job.
I was going to say, I would be very I get on with all my managers, and it's a great relationship, but I still think that I'd probably not be as forthcoming as to just say everything. So that's very beneficial.
Yeah. So, but there are two things that makes it reverse mentoring different from other kind of like similar initiatives. Usually in large organizations you have feedback sessions, you have roundtable sessions where people sit together and talk, but what really makes the reverse mentoring different is that first of all, you break down the layers of an organization. So you have very junior people, they will never report, they will maybe have 3 or 4 or 5 layers with the senior exec. So they are not afraid of I don't want to say repercussions, but they're more free to speak their mind. Because they know that
it doesn't have a knock-on effect on their own work day to day.
So this is important. And the other thing that is important is that you build a relationship. So when you create your cohort of reverse mentors, you can stay with them for 12 months. So that you have maybe the first meeting, everyone is need to understand each other. And little by little through the months, people can open up a bit more. And it's difficult just to go in a meeting 60 minutes and give and tell what the feedback is, and then you're like, oh, I should have said that. Or and also for the senior executives, much more useful because they have they get to know these people and they get to trust them. They get to understand where they're coming from, and that takes time.
It does, and I think that if we're the industry that we're in, it's all about data and presenting the facts back, presenting accurate visual representation of what an organization looks like and how that can benefit your organization going forward. Learning from not the bottom but from the lower levels up is also a really good indicator of what's happening on the ground, because obviously some of that information will never ever reach a suite person ever, because they just like you said, 5 layers, but the day-to-day job, the day-to-day work that gets done, and how the mechanisms of how it gets done, the tech stack that people are using, the focuses for certain teams, some of that would get completely lost without something like that. What are some ways that we can gauge if someone is neurodiverse? That's a big, broad topic, but for me, I would want to know if there's anything that I could do in my arena of making someone feel comfortable.
So, first of all, it's very difficult because even sort of like from a clinical point of view, which I'm sort of like I don't want to mislead anyone, but I'm not a psychologist, psychiatrist. Is very, very complicated. And if you read the DSM, which is the Bible of sort of like of psychiatric conditions, you can read through like what kind of like the different kind of neurodiversity that is there. So you can talk about autism, you can talk about ADHD, you can talk about VSTT. You know, there are many kinds of conditions. It's very difficult to know that, but at the same time, it's very difficult then to apply the label, because sometimes you might, as we all know, you might think that the person is a bit more introvert than others. May just mean that he's just introverted.
Introverted, yes.
Yeah, so just other things, and it's very difficult.
It is, and I think that's the thing. You don't want to single someone out. I think it's just trying to make everyone feel just as comfortable in the workplace.
I think the important things is to talk about it, so that people feel free then to open up. And say, look, I have this condition, and it would benefit me if we could do X, Y, Z. I think that really helps. Being in a workplace that you're comfortable, open enough, comfortable talking about it, that's very important.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing, is to have conversations like we are now, getting the knowledge firsthand, really understanding what we can do in our side of things, but like you said, also giving people who are neurodiverse tips and tricks to deal with things themselves in the workplace. And if we foster that level of comfort that they can come to us or say, hey, you were being a bit loud and I need to focus and I need you to shh, whatever it might be, making that conversation really easy, free-flowing, not being blocking on that. Hopefully that does help.
I'm sure.
Going forward, So I think more of a personal question for you now then is, what do you personally see for your future? We just like to get a bit of an all-rounded sense of our guests.
Yes. So I really would like to be more healthy personally, be more... I want to say agile, but not because it is agile methodology. But simply like I would like to be more flexible. So I would really like to spend some time doing more yoga, doing more exercise, jogging more. And because, the Latin used to say mens sana in corpore sano, which means a healthy mind in a healthy body.
Yes.
And I think it really helps. Like, for example, just if you think about neurodiverse people actually benefit a lot from doing exercises.
Interesting. How so? Could you just elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah. So it is two things. Some people are hyperactive.
Yes.
So they need to not waste the energy, to channel that energy
into something positive.
But more on the biological side, like doing balancing exercises, doing teamworks, like playing football and so on and so forth. They switch on parts of the brain that in neurodiverse people are not usually either not switched on or really connected.
Right.
And by doing the exercise, those neurons actually get switched on and get connected, and really helps.
Okay, that's really interesting. So, I mean, exercise is beneficial for everyone as well, but I think that's a really positive way of channeling that, and it's excess energy as well, a lot of it. So it's really good that even after work they can get involved in team sports. I think that's something that I was talking about with someone at Kubrick the other day, is maybe getting a team together to play netball or football or something, and that just gives people, even at work, a way of feeling included, when in other things, maybe social events, they feel it's not really for me, this is a bit too much. There's other ways of actually including them.
Because when you go to a social event, sometimes the point of the social event is the social event.
Yes.
Well, actually, if you go and do something like go play out, the point of the social event is playing.
Yeah.
Which gives something more
point
gives
to
an
it.
Objective,
Objective to it, absolutely. So you said one of the ways is that you wanted to get physically more agile. Is there anything else in your future, even sort of professionally?
I don't know whether you have ever heard of the concept of the life is made up by two mountains.
I have not. I love your analogy. I have to say, your analogies throughout this have been phenomenal. Okay. So let's end on an analogy. Tell me the mountain one.
Yeah. So this is I want to say it's not a classic, but in the Judeo-Christian tradition, there are often books that talks about it.
Yeah.
But essentially, each of us in life, we have to climb two mountains. The first mountains is the mountain where you need to prove to yourself that you have made it. You need to prove to yourself who you are. And that's why you see a lot of young people, especially in the first year of their life, of their work career, they really, really strive to get better, to learn new things. You know, people go to university, people go to work, they start, and they're really passionate about doing that. And that's the first mountain. And then as life goes on, usually what happens, you have an event. It could be a tragedy. It could be just a life event that brings you down from that. Because all of that running, all of that proving to yourself that you are on the right path is not enough anymore.
Yeah.
So you start to go down. And then that's where, so that there's the valley of the mountain. And then you start to realize that actually life is not all about yourself. It's actually about everyone else.
Yes.
It's about you helping other people. It's about you helping your family. It's about you supporting them. And that's actually what is the second mountain is about.
Yeah.
It's about actually making sure that you are helping the community, helping other people. And if I think about my life, I think I'm probably somewhere in the valley going up.
Yeah.
Somewhere there.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying, because I was listening to other podcasts on this. And a lot of people are very passionate because they're young. They want to do more about data. They want to get promoted. They want to do things. And I was reflecting on it, and I was thinking that, yes, of course, I want that.
Absolutely.
Of course, that's part of it. But my I guess my perspective would be that, yes, because I want to help more people. I want to reach to more.
The reason why is different.
Correct, yes. But again, I think, and even this particular analogy, you cannot climb the second mountain without the first one. You cannot do that.
Yeah.
That's part of life.
Yeah.
That's part of how we are wired.
Yeah.
So anyway, I found this analogy very interesting because it gives a bit of perspective that, especially we talk about, before we talked about people with different experience and people with maybe are older, you find that what is important in life and what they want to do is very different. But doesn't mean that one is right and one is wrong. It's simply that it's just a different way of supporting the organization, support society, support your family.
That honestly, I think that's probably the best way to end the podcast, because I think that that's given me a lot to reflect on, because you're right, when you speak to someone else and they're motivated by something different to you, almost you have to step back and go, well, that's, I'm not motivated by just money. I'm motivated by wanting to be around people and, wanting to help my family. But there's no right or wrong to it. They're just at different stages of the journey, which is great. And I think that a lot of people are going to find this podcast really, really helpful. So thank you so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome.
It's been amazing. And if people have really resonated with what you've said, where can they connect with you?
You can look me up on LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you very much, Daniele. And thank you to all of our viewers for watching. And we will see you next time with another fabulous episode. Thank you.
Thank you very much.